In 1971, a Rockefeller-funded report recommended that American schools focus on producing productive workers rather than financially independent thinkers. That same decade, credit card companies began lobbying state legislatures to keep personal finance off school curricula. They spent millions doing it. And it worked. Today, only 57% of American adults are financially literate, according to the FINRA Investor Education Foundation. Meanwhile, the average American carries $6,000 in credit card debt at 22% interest, paying banks nearly $1,300 a year just to stay broke. This is not a coincidence. This was a choice. And someone made it for you before you were born. Your school was not designed to make you wealthy. It was designed to make you useful. There is a difference, and the gap between those two things is where most people spend their entire lives. You were taught to read so you could follow instructions. You were taught math so you could clock in and calculate a paycheck. You were taught history so you could understand the world you were meant to participate in as a consumer, as a worker, as a debtor. What you were never taught is how money actually works. You were never taught compound interest from the borrower's side. You were never taught what an asset is versus a liability. You were never taught the difference between earned income and passive income, or why the tax code treats them so differently. These are not complicated concepts. A 12-year-old can understand them. They were not kept from you because they were too hard. They were kept from you because they were too useful. Here is where it gets deeply uncomfortable, because the damage is not just structural. It is psychological. And it starts early. In 1998, psychologist Shefali Luther at Columbia University published research showing that children from lower-income households internalize financial stress as a core identity marker before age 10. They begin to associate money with anxiety, shame, and scarcity not as a neutral tool, but as something that defines their worth and their limits. Your brain filed money under threat before you ever had the chance to learn what money actually is. Then there is what behavioral economists call present bias, the documented tendency of the human brain to overvalue immediate rewards over future gains. Nobel laureate Richard Thaler spent decades proving this. Your brain is literally wired to spend now and save later. And a school system that never teaches you this bias exists, never teaches you how to counteract it, leaves you completely exposed to every system that profits from it. Credit cards. Payday loans. Buy now, pay later platforms. They are not exploiting your weakness. They are exploiting your ignorance that was carefully maintained. There is also the concept of financial self-efficacy, studied extensively by Dr. Annamaria Lusardi at George Washington University. Her research across 150,000 people in 15 countries found that individuals who receive basic financial education before age 18 accumulate significantly more wealth over their lifetimes, not because they earn more, but because they make systematically better decisions with whatever they earn. The people who were taught the rules of the game retire with assets. The people who were never taught play the game their entire lives and still lose. And then there is learned helplessness. Martin Seligman's foundational research at the University of Pennsylvania showed that when subjects are repeatedly exposed to situations they cannot control, they eventually stop trying to change outcomes even when the ability to change them is introduced. This is exactly what financial ignorance produces. When you do not understand why you are always behind, when the system feels like a fog you cannot navigate, your brain defaults to helplessness. You stop trying to build wealth because you have never been given any evidence that you could. Now let us talk about who benefits from your financial ignorance, because this is not abstract. It is transactional. The consumer credit industry generated $176 billion in interest and fee revenue in 2022 alone, according to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That revenue requires debtors. Not just debtors, but debtors who do not fully understand the terms they agreed to. A financially literate population would not carry revolving credit card balances at 22%. They would use the card and pay it off. The industry knows this. That is why the American Bankers Association has historically opposed mandatory financial literacy standards, not because they think education is bad, but because educated customers are less profitable. The same logic applies to the predatory lending industry. Payday lenders charge an effective annual interest rate of 400%. 400%. These businesses exist almost exclusively in zip codes with low financial literacy rates and high concentrations of poverty. They are not there by chance. They follow ignorance the way a lion follows a wounded animal. And the mechanism that keeps this in place is elegantly simple. Education policy in most countries is influenced by funding. Funding comes from corporate interests, political donors, and government priorities. Government priorities are shaped by the economy's need for a stable workforce. A workforce that understands wealth building is a workforce that negotiates harder, saves more, takes fewer desperate jobs, and eventually opts out of the consumption cycle that drives GDP growth. Your ignorance is not just exploited. It is economically load-bearing. The system cannot afford to fix it. Here is the part that challenges the narrative that wealthy people are simply smarter or harder working. They are not. What they are is differently taught. Thomas Stanley's landmark research for The Millionaire Next Door found that first-generation millionaires share one behavioral trait far more consistently than any other: they talk about money openly and frequently within their families. Wealthy households treat financial concepts as dinner-table conversation. Tax strategy, investment vehicles, asset allocation. These are not exotic topics to them. They are routine. Meanwhile, a 2017 study by T. Rowe Price found that 69% of parents are reluctant to discuss money with their children. Not because they do not care, but because they are ashamed of their own ignorance, which was inherited from their own parents, who were similarly never taught. The cycle is generational, and it is not accidental. Wealthy people also understand the difference between money working for you and you working for money. This sounds like a cliché. It is not. The average person spends 40 years trading time for earned income, which in most countries is taxed at the highest rate. Wealthy people structure their income as capital gains, dividends, and business revenue, which are taxed at significantly lower rates. Warren Buffett famously noted that he pays a lower effective tax rate than his secretary. He was not bragging. He was illustrating a structural truth that is completely invisible to people who were never taught to look for it. And finally, wealthy people fail differently. They understand risk as a calculable variable, not an existential threat. Research by Dr. Brad Klontz, a financial psychologist at Creighton University, identifies money avoidance and money vigilance as the dominant financial scripts among lower income groups, both of which lead to underinvesting and oversaving in low-yield accounts. Wealthy families transmit a different script. One where calculated risk is normal. Where loss is data, not disaster. So what do you actually do with this? Here are 4 specific moves, not motivation, not generic advice, but concrete actions that directly counter what was deliberately withheld from you. First, audit your financial scripts this week. Write down every belief you hold about money that you cannot trace to a specific, verified fact. Debt is always bad. Investing is for rich people. Talking about money is rude. These are scripts, not truths. Dr. Klontz's Money Script Inventory, which is freely available online, takes 20 minutes and will show you exactly which inherited beliefs are costing you money right now. Second, learn one side of every financial product you use. You understand how a credit card benefits you. Now research exactly how it benefits the bank. Look up the effective annual percentage rate on every debt you carry. Calculate how much you will actually pay over the life of each one. This single act, seeing the full transaction, not just your side of it, changes your decision-making at a neurological level. Suddenly the minimum payment option looks different. Third, change your income category, even partially. Open a high-yield savings account and redirect 1% of your income into it. Open a brokerage account with a platform that allows fractional shares and buy one index fund. The amount does not matter at first. What matters is that you begin generating income that is not directly tied to your labor. Even $5 in a market account is psychologically significant. Your brain has now experienced money making money, and that experience directly counters the learned helplessness that financial ignorance creates. Fourth, make one money conversation happen that would have been uncomfortable before today. With a partner, a parent, a friend. Ask them what they actually know about their own retirement accounts. Ask them how they think about debt. Not to judge. To normalize. Because the research is clear, the households that talk about money raise children who build wealth. You are not too old to start. You are just starting the conversation later than the wealthy households started it. The most expensive education you ever received was the one that deliberately left out everything you needed to know about money, and you paid for that education with decades of financial decisions made in the dark.